Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session exploring the intersection of digital forensics and identity management. I am Shilpa Goswami, and I'll be your host for the day. Before we get started, we would like to go over a few house rules. For our attendees, the session will be in listen only mode and will last for an hour, out of which last 15 minutes will be dedicated to Q&A. If you have any question during the webinar to organizer or our speaker, please use the Q&A window. Also, if you face any audio video challenges, please check your internet connections or you may log out and log in again. Our speaker for today's session, Tejas Shroff. He is currently the Senior Director of Managed Security Services at Entity Data, managing the Identity and Access Management practice. He is also an adjunct professor at the University of Texas at Dallas, where he teaches various cybersecurity courses to graduate students at the Jindal School of Management. He is a board member of FBI-affiliated non-profit InfraGard National, serves on the advisory board for Collin College's cybersecurity program and mentors the UTD cybersecurity. Without any further delay, I would hand over the session to you, Tejas.
Thank you all for attending. Like Silva already gave my background, um, I am currently a senior director at Entity Data. I manage our identity and access management practice. Like I said, like she said, I'm also an adjunct professor at UT Dallas, where I'm primarily uh, teaching to the graduate students. I'm also at InfraGard and involved in various other organizations as a mentor. So giving back to identity is something which has always been around, but since last 3 4 years, especially since pandemic, identity has taken a center seat. Back in the days, I'm using the word back in the days, I'm talking about pre-pandemic. Like these people used to go to work, uh, the boundaries were confined and defined by network that you worked out of. But post pandemic, you could work from anywhere. People are working from anywhere, any part of the world, any office, a coffee shop, a library, anywhere. A lot of people even work from the beach when the pandemic was around. So, how did they work? They worked because they had a digital identity which could allow them to go from and connect from anywhere. So, network did not define the boundaries. It's your identity which started taking you everywhere. So, digital identity, and we are talking the digital world only. There's also a physical identity, the badge cards that people used to carry with them. Now, a lot of companies do not even issue those badge cards. So, digital identity has taken the predominance in our lives, and I'll go through it. There's not one identity that we are dealing with. There are a number of identities that we are dealing with. From what I heard, the next generation is now talking about carrying an identity wallet. So we'll come to that. So, anyways, an entity has something, what we call it as something that can prove that it's you. It could be a human user, it could be a laptop, it could be organization, what is used to prove yourself to a digital system. A username, for instance. That's your identity. Digital forensics is the process of collecting and analyzing digital evidence. So here we are talking both digital identity, talking digital forensics, where forensics has been around for a while. A lot of you might be watching PSI and other uh, crime shows where they show you when you talk forensics, the first thing that comes to your mind is that yellow tape, which they show in the movies where the area is cordoned off because something happened and you have to collect evidence. Likewise, we have digital forensics. So why are we discussing this? Because now it's your identity which carries you forward in an organization. You are bound by your identity, but identity has no boundaries technically. It can freely move around the organization. So, in order to do that, what we need to do is wherever your identity goes from an application to application across the systems, forensics is going to be following the suit and making sure that you are able to track that identity, the paths that identity follows. So that's the reason evidence and access, they need to come together, and both of them will come together to make sure that you are able to either confirm or refute that you were not there at a particular place. And that's the reason identity and forensics have to be merged, at least be on the same trajectory. What is decentralized identity? So there's a new concept of decentralized identity. All this while we're talking about centralized identities, but now decentralized identity is helping individuals take better control, better ownership of their digital identities. Right? You no longer need a central authority or intermediary. So that's where our third thing, which I'm going to talk about, blockchain or distributed ledger technology, comes into play. But more of that later. So as discussed, forensics is the application of science to identify, collect, examine, and analyze the data while preserving the integrity of information and maintaining a strict chain of custody. Chain of custody is very, very important. Chain of custody is where that basically gives you an end-to-end who has controlled what data so that the data doesn't get contaminated, data doesn't get tampered with. So investigators can definitely use that as a digital evidence to analyze and understand what's going on in the world of logs, what's going on in the world of monitoring, and you can have a range of criminal activity, including cyber attacks, data breaches, and most importantly, criminal and civil investigations. IAM, on the other hand, is the practice of ensuring that your computer systems have a clear picture of identity of each individual or resource who's authorized to access the system. And system is able to control their access, which doesn't allow unauthorized individuals from accessing resources and allowing the authorized individual who can get into the system, perform their legitimate actions. So both of these are critical, as I mentioned. So what are some of the business drivers? As I said, identity is the new perimeter. Network was defined as the perimeter, now identity is your new perimeter. It's your primary entry point post-pandemic, right? Every individual can have definitely more than 20 identities. If you all look at your own number of identities that you have your work email, your personal emails, your social media accounts, various other things. Each individual can easily have more than 20 identities. Number of them, many more. Various accounts, your bank accounts that you have accounts for. So everywhere it's an identity. Now, some of the places you may be using the same email address, but it's still tied to a different domain. So it's counted as a different identity. Emerging technologies is going to need access anywhere, anytime, and it's only continuing to grow. I would actually add one more thing saying anywhere, anytime, using any device, right? So it's not about cutting down the accesses for people. It's about how to enable more access for people so that they can access from anywhere, anytime, using any device. But yes, as long as we are able to monitor, we should be okay. So end users definitely need to access their identities and they have to prove evidence of their credentials. If I go and present myself and say I am an EC Council speaker, how can somebody validate? I need to have some sort of a way to validate. So one of my forensics evidence would be that I am an EC Council speaker is when this whole registration of this webinar is given out. Somebody can go back and check, yes, the forensic shows that I had conducted this webinar, so I am an EC Council speaker. So you have to provide evidence of credentials. And it's not like you have to provide evidence every time, but if something goes wrong, means we all know, right? Digital forensics doesn't come into play. No, you are not analyzing forensics data in a normal situation. You are analyzing when something goes wrong. When something goes wrong, the forensics better be able to confirm that you are who you are saying you are. So identity life cycle means that access is not constant, it is evolving. Those people who are aware with identities would know that uh, within the world of identity, we have a concept of what we call it as a joiner, mover, lever. Right? When a person joins the organization, we moves across the organization. He retires or quits the organization. So all that means the access goes from being initially granted to empowered to revoked. So we have a life cycle for the access. And you all probably may not realize, but once you are, some of you are still students, you've probably never worked, but you will realize that your access is continuously changing. Even if you're students, you would see the semesters you have access to the courses, you lose that access once the semester is over. So your access is continuously evolving. There is a concept of personas which has been developed and more personas. So personas is not your access, but uh, it is a combination of accesses which is developed. It's a logical accesses are grouped together to create a persona. So access control becomes more and more complex. Focus on identity means there is more need for accountability, auditing, etc. When something goes wrong, you need to be able to provide either the evidence of access or absence of access. If there was an if there was an incident which happened, you need to be able to prove if you are questioned whether you were there or you were not there. And forensics can help you do that. If you look at it currently, the identity attacks are at its highest peak and they are growing. If you come across more and more ransomware incidents, other incidents, you'll find out that escalation of privileges, somebody got access to something and then they escalated the privileges by either moving laterally, either moving vertically, and getting the higher level of privileges is what actually got you the identity access. Um, the access, and that basically led to the attack. Right. So the identity attacks are at its highest peak. So I have a couple of pictures here showing there is a term in IAM which is I and then the four A's, which is identification, authentication, authorization, auditing, and accountability. So all this talk about doing the kind of a marriage of IAM and forensics is new. But if you look at it, within the IAA world, we've already had this. Because there is identification, authentication, and authorization, which is the core of your identities. Username, authentication is your password, and authorization is the combination says what do you have access to. While the last two, auditing and accountability, are focused more onto your They are focused more on the forensics aspect of it. On the other side, we have digital identity, which is at the center of everything. You have identities in various different things. If you look at these, you would associate you have healthcare IDs, financial services, everywhere. Even your Uber Eats, even your if you're ordering food, you have IDs. Every single app you have on your smartphone, your ID is associated. So if you look at it, the world of identity is not new to anyone. The world of control needs to be. So blockchain, another big thing, right? We've been hearing blockchain, blockchain everywhere. So what is a blockchain? Blockchain is a decentralized database in which entries are stored by peers via a peer-to-peer network, right? Data is stored as timestamp blocks, which are linked in a chain, resulting in an immutable audit trail. The keyword is immutable audit trail, right? Immutable means something that cannot be modified, something which cannot be altered, something that cannot be deleted. Forensics wants that, right? When you want a chain of custody, you don't want people to delete things. That's the reason this is becoming a natural uh, successor or natural option in the world of forensics. So, immutable audit trail is the record of all transactions that have occurred on a distributed ledger, right? It also ensures that there is a permanent record of all transactions which is used for auditing purposes. So if I have my identity, I want to make sure that I'm able to get this immutable audit trail to help me so that I can go in and prove that I was there, I wasn't there, my ID has been used or unused in particular scenario. So in audit, immutable audit trail works by using cryptography to create a digital signature. So the biggest thing is, as we are discussing, right, there are too many moving parts in an ecosystem now. So identities need to be linked to illegal conduct, and that would require digital evidence to play a significant role because you can only link an identity to illegal contact if there is evidence of it, right? And we are all living in a world where IoT, IIoT, industrial IoT, and I have an example to talk about that. So IoT, IIoT is becoming our day-to-day lives. Maintaining auditability, traceability, and evidence integrity is becoming more and more important. So the block gets added to the chain of blocks, and it creates an immutable record, as I discussed. So, and one of the things I'm talking about it uh, later, but I'd like to bring it up. Your identity right now is almost like a fish in an ocean, right? Wherever it sees the access, it can go in. So within the world of, if you consider your enterprise or ecosystem as an ocean, your identity can travel across the ocean. So when you're going from point A to point B to point C to point one again or point A again, then you need to have evidence that you went from point A to point B to point C and then back to point A instead of point A to B to C and then coming back to C to B to A. So when the identities are going from system to system, you need better digital forensics to be able to uh, help stitch that story in an unfortunate event that you have to stitch. Digital forensics is all about recreating, right? You're basically going and reverse engineering the thing. If something happened, you need to be able to either prove or disprove that this happened or this did not happen. So, as we discussed, blockchain technology is focusing on your decentralized identity management. The blockchain technology takes your identity management, it decentralizes it, and it shifts the control of personal data from the centralized authorities to individuals. Blockchain provides numerous use cases in identity management, self sovereign identity, digital credentials, insurance, verification, but most importantly, provenance of identity. It's able to prove your identity, right? Decentralized identifiers goes by DIDs. It allows the complete ownership and control over the digital identities without relying on third-party verification. We all know that third-party verification can be costly, right? So this also helps in making it more cost-effective. Right? You need to have a secure and decentralized storage for your personal information, and blockchain technology enables that, right? So, as discussed, decentralized identifiers are important in the world of blockchain identity management. DIDs are unique, they are self generated identifiers that the users can create for themselves. But, as we discussed, even the verifying blockchain credentials is a key aspect of identity management. And one of the things which we are primarily discussing here is the provenance of identity. How do you prove yourselves? That's the most important thing. So I'm taking IIoT. A lot of you are used to IoT, which is Internet of Things. IIoT is Industrial Internet of Things, right? So IoT is great. We're using it in our homes. We have the Alexas of the world. We have the other things, smart switches, smart devices. They are there. But IIoT is where your industrial systems are tied up. So one of the big things in the world of identity is also machine identities, right? So machine identities are becoming more and more prominent. Machines are talking to each other. The world of automation. We still haven't brought the big thing which is happening these days. Everywhere there's a push for AI, automation, right? And all that means more and more devices will be talking to each other. Take out the human intervention. And when devices talk to each other, devices don't have emotions. You don't go and question a device. The way to question a device is questioning through their logs, questioning through their monitoring, questioning through their forensics. So that's why we are moving onto the path which would need more and more identities to talk to each other, but more and more forensics to validate what identities have been talking to each other. So IIoT forensics focuses on identifying evidence and investigative procedures, and we're looking at some critical challenges. There are, as I mentioned, so when systems talk to each other, there's no emotions, there's no questioning ability. So you need to be able to have systemic guidelines which are either there or not there, right? In order to obtain evidence from your complex systems. And you have to make sure that the evidence is not tampered with. People don't have access who can go and modify the logs. So some of these technologies are, like I said, they're coming together just to make sure as the need for identities increase, need for forensics increases, needs for securing them increases. So hence the things that we are talking about. Current techniques are not able to uh, make sure that the integrity, confidentiality, or anonymity, or for that matter, even track the provenance of identity. So that's why we need to focus more. Single points of failure in storage media is preventing efficient acquisition of evidence. There is no way we can have all the machines write their logs to a single point, so that we have to rely on separate devices, and they could be in different formats, they could be in different uh, types of systems. Those who have worked with the industry would know that the industrial systems are a lot different. So blockchain will complement as a decentralized distributed ledger system. Blockchain obviously offers resilience. It operates as a chain, so it is able to link the blocks together. So even if different systems can provide different blocks of data, blockchain can help you link them together. It ensures that dependency is blocked and you're able to detect and alert on any of the data tampering which could happen. And most importantly, blockchain guarantees evidence integrity. So can blockchain be the mediator? So the traditional tools for solving cyber crimes and preparing court cases are making investigations difficult. We all know that, right? AI and blockchain design frameworks are used to make the digital forensics process efficient and straightforward. Lawful evidence management schemes can supervise the entire evidence flow. Right? There are a number of attempts where blockchain-based identity management systems are in place, self-sovereign identity. There's a company called Sovereign, there's a company called Identity.com. These are the things which are, there are a number of startups which are actually talking about self-sovereign identity. Blockchain has seen pretty decent success. So the attempts are always there to integrate blockchain in the design of next generation identity management solutions. Right. As discussed, blockchain provides a block-based forensics framework. So examinations can be validated, they can be made irreversible, irrefutable. You can trace them, they are robust, and based on their architecture, they can demonstrate high level of confidence among the examiners and the evidence entities. Number of human and machine identities will continue to grow. IAM wants the identities to work seamlessly because that's the concept of IAMs, right? That the process needs to be bigger than people and identities, both human, machine, or a combination of human and machine, should be able to work seamlessly. Digital forensics doesn't care. Digital forensics wants verifiability, audit trail, and accountability. Saying identity access management, you focus on the top three: identification, authentication, authorization. I'll bring you the audit trail and accounting, and let's work together. Right? Blockchain can offer use cases for both IAM and DF, how it is laid out. With all these things, artificial intelligence, which is basically that word is spotted across every single company's strategy going forward, right? Everyone wants to have an AI strategy. There are various machine language, LLMs, large language models are being developed and they can actually have the say in how the IAM and DF universes operate. One of the big things IAM deals with, it provides a lot of data. Digital forensics needs a lot of data, but at the same time, it needs something like an AI or ML which can help parse through that data in a quick time, right? We want to make sure that all these technologies are able to integrate and work seamlessly so that we have ways to provide evidence for the accesses that need to be obtained or it needs to be proven that no, this person was not there. A classic case of if there is a crime scene, right? The first thing they are trying to determine whose fingerprintings are found. Forensics provides those digital fingerprinting of the identities that may have access. If your identity was not found, then nobody can blame you that you were the one who tried to access an environment, right? If a network breach happens, somebody got into the system, you need to be able to go back and check, did this ID try to do something? Now, it could happen that somebody may have spoofed your identity, right? So that's a different level of discussion. But if somebody had spoofed your identity, at least you your identity was present. That's part one. Then you go into the next level and you try to prove that it was not you, but somebody had spoofed your identity. Now, what did you do to make people know that your identity was stolen, compromised, something, right? So, a lot of times, again, this is a step by step process. And some of you might think, oh, why do we need to do that? No, you need to do that because once something goes wrong, you don't want to be the one who's blamed for the wrong reasons, right? Because I don't know if people realize this or not, but what goes on in social media stays on the social media. So if for some reason, if your name was tied to an investigation, even if you try to run a Google search after 30, 40 years, your name would still possibly come up on the Google search. But yes, this person's name was listed as a suspect, and that is not good for anyone, right? So we want to make sure that our name or our ID doesn't get dragged into something which we don't need to be dragged in. So, as discussed earlier, identities are like fish in the ocean. They're constantly moving around. They're constantly going from application to application. So you need to have some sort of a tracking ability so that you are able to go around the application, you are able to go around, and you cannot go to the application and verify, right? There has to be a, a back-end process where you are able to verify. So, like I said, a network breach happens, somebody comes in through your load balancer, your web servers, enters the system, and once you are doing your forensic evidence check, you need to know that if somebody had come in at a particular time from the outside the internet, they entered through your load balancer, then the same ID went in from load balancer to the web server, from the web server to the another set of load balancers, means you need to be able to establish a chain of command because once you start reconstructing an incident, you have to go back and put everything together and make sure that it's the access which moved from point A to point B to point C, and that's how you're building your forensics evidence chain, right? So if it was not there, it was not there. There is a principle in the world of digital forensics called Locard's exchange principle, which talks about every contact leaves a trace. So if there is no trace, that means there was no contact. So you need to be able to use the forensic data to prove or disprove of something. That's why blockchain is going to help you in doing this provenance of identity. Your forensics can monitor and track the movement so that you're not going to lose the visibility of the situation. Jury is still out to know how well AI, ML, and blockchain will help this marriage of IAM and DF and provide an integrated solution. But at least it offers a solution which is not yet there. So AI and ML is going to basically help you parse through and what we proverbially say finding a needle in a haystack, right? If you have a large pile of hay, and if you drop the needle, and if somebody asks you to find the needle in that haystack, it's not that easy, right? You need something to help you parse through that pile to see where is that needle, right? Because otherwise, you will spend a lot of your time, and by the time somebody else would have moved to another set of things, then that doesn't help much. So we want to make sure that we are able to find what we are looking for in the realistic time. And forensic can help us, but forensic needs help, right? That's where blockchain can come into play, and blockchain can definitely help you go back and uh, streamline the situations. As I said, IoT and IIoT is going to continue to put down more and more challenges for you. So you need to be able to make sure that this world of IoT, this world of IIoT, we have other things which are moving with technologies such as quantum computing and all coming into play. I think things are only going to get more and more convoluted. So we need some technologies which can actually help in streamlining that audit trail. And blockchain does offer the best solution at this point. So, Shalpa, I know we are almost coming to the time, so I'd like to see if I can take some questions because in this topic we can go on and on. The message is broad and clear. There is the world of identity where the identities will need access, they'll need continue to be accessed. There is a world of forensics which will come looking when something goes wrong. So we better have a system in place so that we are able to provide the evidence when needed. And both of these are going to be kind of let loose. So we want to make sure that we have a system which can try and stitch them together. And that's the crux of this discussion. I would like to actually stop at this point and start taking questions because I think the world needs IAM and DF both, and we need to be able to continuously be able to prove this evidence, right? Evidence that the access happened or not happened. So at this point, I think Shilpa, I'll hand it over back to you so that we can take some questions.
Thank you, Tejas, for delivering such an informative session, and our attendees share the same sentiments. If you're interested to learn more about our program, do let us know in the poll that's going to be conducted now. Let us know your preferred mode of training and we will reach out to you soon. So Tejas, shall we start with the Q&A?
Sure.
Okay. So our first question to you is, what best practices can organizations follow to ensure effective collaboration between their digital forensics and identity management teams?
One, to make sure that every identity access is logged because a lot of times, and I'm saying this again and again, is because sometimes we want to go look for the forensics data, but then you find out that the forensics data is not even captured. So first thing is I I take it as there is always a positive flow workflow and there is a negative workflow, right? Most of the times we think that oh we won't need the negative workflow, so we don't even try to test for the negative workflow. We go as if everything's going great, and then when something wrong happens, we try to look for it. Oh, I've not even tested this, and I don't even have data to uh, corroborate what I'm looking for. So I think the most important thing is to make sure, from a best practices point of view, you're doing your continual testing, especially when it comes to your machine identities and all. If you're not collecting your forensic evidence, you won't have it. Obviously, identity access management has its set of best practices. You have to follow the typical password rotations. Now, there is a whole chain of thought which is talking about you should go passwordless. You should go and uh, work off of your digital systems, your biometrics. But on one hand, we are also talking about doing remote work. People are no longer on the shop floor. People are no longer working in front of their machines and devices. So, how is the biometric going to work? A lot of work is, for instance, getting offshored, right? How are you going to validate when somebody is trying to enter the fingerprinting? How do you know it's the person who entered the biometrics is the same person who's using the system? So, again, lot of these things, the best practices come from the best practices that the humans need to follow. Right? The human brain works faster in times, basically creating problems. So people figure out some ways to actually work around the system, and that needs to stop. That's that's my bottom line. Best practices are good, but best practices need to be implemented and followed. Okay.
Thank you, Tejas, for answering that question. Our next question to you is, can the slow speed of blockchain has an effect on digital forensics, or does the speed do not have any effect at all?
No, blockchain's slow speed can have the effect, but it's about, do you want slow speed or do you want the consistent result, right? Because blockchain is slow speed, but there are improvements being made in blockchain. Also, the distributed technology, sometimes you don't need to access the whole chain, right? You can actually just look for the piece within the chain which can provide you where the problem lies, the branch where the problem lies. So slow speed is definitely there, and that is why I brought in the fourth angle in there, that AI will actually help improve. There are advancements in blockchain which are coming in through AI. There are advances in DF which are coming through AI. There are advances in IAM which are coming through AI. So all of those collectively will help improve the efficiency and the speed in a blockchain.
Thank you, Tejas, for answering that question. Our next question to you is, how can digital forensics tools be leveraged to improve incident response and identity theft cases?
Digital forensics and incident response are basically two sides of the same coin, right? Because what the data you are collecting for digital forensics, it's not for your personal use, right? Most of the times it is used in terms of an incident response. Because when you collect that data, you get that digital forensics, you actually go back and use that data to work on a security incident, work on a major incident, and that is why you're working hand in hand. So digital forensics data and incident response, as I said, are two sides of the same coin, or actually even they're on the same side, because you're collecting the forensics data which is feeding into your incident response. So um, I think you mentioned two things, Shilpa. One was incident response, and there was something else. I think. Shilpa, could you repeat that question? I think that question had two parts. I'm just trying to.
Sure. How can digital forensic tools be leveraged to improve incident response and identity theft cases?
Yeah. So identity theft is basically what it is. Again, as long as you have the forensics evidence, you're able to know that who was the one who took over the identity. Right? As I said earlier when I was talking, that the first step is about proving the identity. First step is to prove whether it was your identity which was used or not. Say we have 10 people and an incident happens. You look at it and say, okay, only two identities were used, right? So the other eight are out of scope. So you remove them. Now between the two, you have to go down and see, okay, which of the two identities was something that was actually used or something that was spoofed, something that had an identity theft. So we need to make sure that we are able to identify and, as I said, prove or disprove if the identity was indeed used for something. So identity theft, if that happened, then you can always dispute that yes, somebody else stole my identity and used it. But for that, digital forensics will come in very handy. But that would be the next level of details that you will need to get into. So the first round will eliminate what was not there clearly, and then second round you have to actually go in, dig deeper, and try and find out if digital forensics can help you prove the case of identity theft. Can digital forensics be the only one? No. There could be more tools, but digital forensics tools can definitely be leveraged for both incident response as well as identity theft.
Thank you, Tejas, for answering that question. Our next question to you is, how should one approach on choosing a digital forensic examiner for an incident?
That's a that's a broad question. How should one choose for um, obviously based on their previous work, you need to look at when you're choosing a digital forensics examiner, right? You need to know there are people who have their specialization, somebody who can work on, say, Windows machines or Mac machines, or somebody who actually can work on the network. So everyone has an area of focus. You need to dig deeper and find out, depending on where you think the issue lies, you try and call for that expert. Everyone doesn't have an expertise in everything, right? So you have to find someone who has a prior work experience, prior uh, case studies that they have worked on in helping with that type of an incident, and hopefully that can do it. So obviously you need to do some research in finding out if there is, again, when you try to find a digital forensics or an incident response person, you need to make sure that you are able to verify that somebody has worked on something, right? So as we the thing that we are talking about here, that digital forensics wants verifiability, audit trail, and accountability. That applies when you are choosing a forensics professional as well. That you are able to verify who has worked on something, you're able to see their accountability. Because if I come and say that I'm an expert in mobile forensics, but I've never worked on mobile forensics before, then that's not going to help me. And sometimes the best thing, you have to sometimes take chances, but try and find it, because a lot of times you may want, it's like going and finding a doctor, right? So I want to possibly go to the best doctor in the country, but the problem is that doctor is backed up for 6 months. He doesn't have any openings. So what do? You have to find somebody and hope that that somebody turns out to be good enough. At least the person knows forensics. You're not getting someone from a completely different space. So yeah, it's like choosing any other professional. Like even finding a like a gym instructor. You go to a gym instructor. Yeah, you want to go to the best guy who's who's trained your A-list superstars either in sports or Hollywood or something, and they have helped them work on their gym stuff. But we also have to look at the cost. We also have to look at the availability and make the right decision. So hope that answer.
Thank you, Tejas, for answering that question. We'll take last two questions for the day. Next question to you is, what layers of security measures are support to be put in place for an organization to prevent themselves from such attacks?
Very loaded question. So um, I think whoever has asked that question, I would say probably need to maybe streamline that question. It's like, how do you solve the world's security problem? Means there are in the world of security, we are actually focusing on defense in depth. We are also focusing on there are the various security mechanisms that you need to use. There is no one way to skin the cow, as they say, right? There are various ways to do that. So security is all about putting the layers. It's all about putting the challenges. So there is nothing like where you're solving and making something completely secure. You are basically protecting yourselves for a particular day and hoping that next day somebody's going to come back to you with the next set of challenge. So you have to survive. There is nothing like that. I've put the security in place, so I'm protected for my life. No, every different day is a different challenge. So, say if you are in a zone which has got flood and tornado, right? So, if you protect you're protecting against flood is going to be different than you're protecting against tornado. So, depending on the threat, you take the measures to protect yourselves. So, whoever asked the question, feel free to reach out. I can actually guide you to something. But yes, like I said, you have to follow various security mechanisms like defense in depth, defense in like putting the layered challenges, the making sure you're not the lowest hanging fruit, as they say. You're not the easiest target, uh, uh, and you have to do that with the budget that you have in hand. So you try and put your challenges, you try to protect yourselves, and then hope that you're not the lowest hanging fruit. Sorry, I can only say this much because it's a broad question, but at the same time, yes, there are lots of mechanisms you will need to put in place to secure something because you don't know what the challenge is, what the threat is. Threats are coming from everywhere. You just have to try and protect yourself. You don't know which side you'll be attacked from.
Thank you so much, Tejas, for answering that question. Our last question to you is, what are the OOB tools in market for digital forensics and data analysis?
The tool set is such large that I wouldn't even be able to go and say that use this. I think uh, again, like I said, do your research. There are lots of tools because there are digital forensics. When you can say it's it's a very broad thing, right? So I cannot say that just use this tool or that tool, depending on what you are needing the tools for. Are you needing for mobile? Are you needing for laptop? Are you needing for network? Depending on where your area of expertise is needed, there are lots of out of the box open source tools available in the market, and you can actually the best way I would suggest is try and join some groups etc on LinkedIn etc and ask people that question, right? Do some forum searches. There are lots of companies. I would not like to take any specific names because it I don't want to make it sound like this is a paid commercial for them. But I just wanted to say that there are lots of different tools depending on what you need, and there are standard tools. I'll just say their names anyways. Couple of them, tools like FTK Major, NCASE, etc., which are very broad tools, which actually even we use it in our coursework. So I can say those. FTK Major, if you're especially working with your systems. NCase has different tools, but other than that, I would like to possibly reserve that answer and say, um, yeah, not the tool recommendation. I can give you the general guidelines as a part of the scope.
Thank you again to our wonderful speaker, Tejas, for answering those questions and for the great presentation and knowledge shared with our global audiences. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and we are looking for more and more sessions with you. Now, before we conclude the webinar, Tejas, would you like to give a small message to our audience?
No, I think so. Okay, anyone who's looking for a career in digital forensics and identity access management, I can only tell you that much that um, this offers a very big scope. So, especially again, like I said, I run the identity access management practice. I can tell you, IAM is here to stay, it's here to grow. So, just make sure that you are able to continuously uh, make the future advancements in terms of the world of IAM, in terms of the world of forensics. A lot of you, I don't know people's background to say that what you can do or what you cannot do, but digital forensics requires you to pay attention to detail. So if that is not you, try not to go there. You have to be very, very patient when you're working on digital forensics. If you are taking and looking through the logs, you have it's like you have to be like a law enforcement person, right? Like a policeman or a so. You're trying to find or a detective. If you're looking for the logs, you need to go through it very, very carefully. Yep. It doesn't mean that it comes to everyone naturally. Some people are just born like developers or so. They like to stay at the high level. They like to be deep, but they want to be into the more glamorous thing. Forensics is not glamorous. Identity access management is great, but do you really want to be the one who wants to work on the life cycle of an identity? Right? After a while, it can get somewhat mechanical. So, again, identify your areas. The best way, if you guys are looking for something, I would ask you to go find a mentor somewhere, right? Who can help guide you. Uh, doesn't have to be me or anyone else. I would suggest just go find a mentor who can help guide you because if you're stepping into the world of cyber, I think it's an ocean. So you need somebody who can guide you in the right direction. So good luck everyone and hope this was helpful.
Thank you so much, Tejas, for the message to our audience.